And we'll move on to item 7, which is under the heading of antisocial behaviour.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in relation to the antisocial behaviour update, and obviously we've had this a few times now in various quarters, it just outlines, the report outlines around our current approach to antisocial behaviour and talks about the fact that we've had a review in our ASBAT system, which is basically a computer-based system, the ASBAT system, which is the antisocial behaviour analysis tool that we use for medium and high-risk cases. Actually, whilst we had hoped it had been used across the 5 districts, at one point districts were stepping away from it in partnership to record things slightly differently, which made it very difficult for me as a strategic lead on antisocial behaviour to compare apples with apples in that everybody was on a different system. So we had a full review of it last summer. We have updated the system somewhat, and we've now got the 5 districts back on using the same system, which I think is useful because it allows us to compare one with another, and it's certainly most helpful when the HMIC come and inspect us as well. So we haven't reviewed their activity on that as yet because we need it to have some time to bed in, but certainly around April or May time we will look for a full review again as to the 5 districts and the 5 district hubs now using the system and what further changes need to take place. The report talks about 5 local authority areas, all with an antisocial partnership hub, which is correct, and they vary in scale and size. So like at Calderdale, for example, it's a handful of resources from the police and the partnership that come together over at Elland, but in Leeds it's a much bigger team. So different levels of funding going to different teams, which I think is important, and certainly it's something I point out when the HMIC come to inspect us. They're not going to see 5 exactly the same because of funding and the like. So just running through the report, last year as well, we had a full review around our problem-solving approach, in that we had staff problem-solving on a number of systems again, and we wanted to bring that all back to one. So we're doing it, 5 times the same, as good as we can. So we've had a review of that, and we now have a problem-solving approach on a problem-solving niche occurrence as well, as opposed to using various problem-solving models, and we're currently running out training across the force in relation to that, and Chief Inspector Jackie March is leading on that training for the 5 districts and ASB partnership hubs as well. So that's ongoing, and as I say, we will have a review of it, and we will check and balance and refresh and renew anything that needs to happen when we've had a review of how that has landed and bedded in. You can see from the report there's been a downward trend in ASB incidents in Wakefield and Bradford over the last couple of years, but then Leeds and Calderdale have had an increase, and the net result of all that is a 4% increase overall. But then when you look behind the figures, they've all started in different places, and this is why we had this full review last year around how we record antisocial behaviour and how we then problem solve it. And I think you've got to overlay the context from the last report around crime recording as well, because what we saw was antisocial behaviour incidents go down and criminal damage seesaw and come up, and actually when you looked across and you read across, when you added them both together, it came out as the same. So I think it's just really, and we're just finding our way with letting that bed and settle to be able to ascertain what the true rise is. But at the minute overall it looks like 4%. But as I say, I do want to continue to review this throughout the year to have a look at that. And then overlaid with this, we look at our public perception in relation to ASB. Obviously that's the confidence data, and whilst we've not had any confidence data for a little while, I'm aware obviously we're going back online with that in April, which I think is a really key measure to this, because the first thing I will ask is, what is satisfaction like around antisocial behaviours? How pleased are people when they report an incident to us? But also, what are the confidence levels like in relation to antisocial behaviour? And again, we've got half the information, not the other half, but I'm really pleased to say we will have that moving forward. And whilst there is a worsening satisfaction rate of about 1%. That's obviously quite a small reduction compared to the 6% overall. So I'm not unduly worried about that at this moment in time, but I'll be really pleased when I get the confidence data to be able to overlay it.
Okay, thank you. And again, just a bit of context on this. So around 60% of people who responded to our Your Priorities, Your Plan consultation
Yes.
sort of indicated that tackling antisocial behaviour was important to them. So it tends to be that one, along with the road safety, that is always up there. As you've said, that we have now reviewed our own survey process, and that's gone out, and we'll be getting the data for is it in April?
I think it's just on its way out, isn't it, at the moment? So I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we needed to review that because it was time to look at that survey as well. So hopefully, well, absolutely during the course of the year, that data will be coming in, which will hopefully assist not only yourselves but our partners as well.
Yes.
And again, the proceeds of crime monies through the Safer Communities Fund, this is the one area that has, it's received nearly £800,000 worth of project funding across lots of groups. So again, we know that ASB can actually cover a whole plethora of things, and hence your reference to criminal damage. In terms of the review, Angela, that you mentioned, am I right in saying that started in November of last year? Is there a time frame for the evaluation of that and the outcomes?
Yeah, the review took place probably around this time last year. It was just after Easter in 2016. We reviewed it throughout up until around August, and then we started to roll out the training from November onwards with a delivery plan. So it started to be rolled out just before Christmas, and it's still being rolled out. And what we've agreed to do is roll it out to our PCSOs and our ward officers first, and then after that for neighbourhood patrols, so the 24/7 staff. But it's important that we get it rolled out first of all to the staff on the front line who are there in the communities, problem solving. So it's ward officers, PCSOs first.
Okay, sorry, I think I've got a little bit confused there. I think what I really meant to say was the Force Performance Improvement Unit ASBAT review. So it mentions that there'll be a further review in the spring.
Yes, that's the little bit I talked about earlier around. We've effectively pushed all our districts back onto the ASBAT system with some IT upgrades, which is what they were asking for. They're now all using it because before they'd come away from that. And we're going to review after April time around to check and balance that in fact it's landed as we would want.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
I think just by way of context, Commissioner,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised when you say that when you did the survey for the police and crime plan that this was a priority area raised by the public, because this is something that they see and have to live with every day.
Yeah.
And yes, we do take it seriously. The challenge that I've had over the last 12 months has been the level of resources that we've actually had available, together with the level of resources our partners now found that they have available. And last year we had a huge focus around protecting the vulnerable because of the levels of the types of crimes that were now being reported to us. So for understandable reasons, we've had to put some additional focus in there. Therefore, I do recognise that in terms of the satisfaction figures, people do probably feel that the level of visible resource that we can put to some of these problems hasn't been what it could be. Having said that, as Angela's rightly pointed out, we've now got a degree of confirmation around numbers in terms of PCSOs, and we'll continue to upskill them. We've got new people coming into the organisation. We've got a real appetite across the local authorities to help us in terms of prevention and early intervention, I feel, plus the additional resourcing around crime prevention. So I do think we can probably start to think a bit more creatively about how we can tackle some of the community problems. And let's be frank, this was the area that also got picked up in the recent effectiveness piece of work from HMIC. So you've caught us at a little bit of a crossroads in terms of ASB and where are we, and then the wider neighbourhood policing piece. But I think by continuing to listen to our community and some of their feedback and their thoughts and concerns, we can start to be a little bit more refocused as we move forward.
Yeah, and I accept that, because absolutely we've had a lot of discussion around the resources, sadly, that have been cut from our budgets, and as you know, I've set local police precepts to raise as much as possible, and it is good that we are recruiting when new numbers are coming through, but again, I accept that all this takes time, and the fact that our partners, particularly in local government, are continuing to see very significant cuts to their budgets does impact on what the police can do as well. Youth services is a classic example, but I guess in raising that, it's a case of what are the things that we can do in tackling youth-related ASB, for example, in the review of the neighbourhood policing going forward.
One of the elements of the review of neighbourhood policing, and I know you're aware of that Marianne is leading on, one of the areas is around ASB. It's around early intervention. It follows a clear theme around the sort of troubled families agenda, around who's the lead agency for early intervention, which of course will pick up those families and those youngsters who cause a lot of harm to our communities. Part of it will obviously be around prevention, which is Chris Joyce's work, but also education, raising awareness, because I think you're right to flag around not only have we had a reducing budget, but actually some of our partnerships. So in some of the meetings I sit in, like the local criminal justice board, the youth offending teams, are particularly stretched and going through a lot of review. So I think it is a worry for us all around what partners can come to the table and how much we can, affect this. But actually, the neighbourhood policing review and the chief mentions around the effectiveness review, and this got particular mention from the HNIC, that we're good at the high-end crime and the very serious crime, but it's this low-level local crime and understanding the issues.
Yeah, and some of the themes there are around repeat incidents, supporting vulnerable victims, and how we can sort of improve that overall satisfaction piece, because whilst, again, in the report, and you said, Angela, about the decreases in areas like Wakefield and was it Kirklees, around the satisfaction levels. The numbers of incidents. I just get a feeling that even in those areas, having been out and met and spoken to people, that there is a real sort of concern about the overall community safety capability, if you like, within their neighbourhoods, which isn't just about the police.
No. And I think where we are really well placed, if we're talking about repeat victims and vulnerable repeat victims, is in our approach obviously to the safeguarding side, because it would get captured within that side around adult safeguarding, around our partnerships in the councils. I know they're under a great deal of strain as well. However, we are better placed now, I feel, compared to a number of years ago with our close partnership working. And whilst we've got MASHES, the multi-agency teams at the 5 districts, which are children teams, we are seeing a move towards that in relation to adults as well, which I actually think will be really helpful for those repeat adult victims of ASB moving forward.
And I won't go into it in too much detail now, but I think that is an area that will increasingly become onto our radar, because obviously we have an ageing population. We know about the targeting of vulnerable elderly people, with the people that go around scamming, and so I think that I agree that is an area that will require more partnership working and more attention.
Well, I think this is why we went quite public this week, didn't we, about our work with the Early Intervention Foundation, because what I'm really keen to understand, bearing in mind, as you say, this climate of limited budgets and therefore limited resources, we really need to understand what works within an affordable climate, so that we can actually try and deliver the best services we can with who we have that are the most effective. So I think that piece of research that we're going to be undertaking and working with the EIF is going to be absolutely crucial moving forward. So I'm really glad that we've signed up to that partnership.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that report and for the debate and the answers. So thank you for that.